Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 1. And I am showing you Exhibit A. This is a confirmation email from the Orange County Sheriff's Office, dated January 26th, 2022. Now, at this stage, we're about 9, 10 years into this surveillance activity. And as I said in the introduction, it's gone through phases. Right now, we're in the phase of the hostilities. One thing about, I guess, stalkers, monitoring spirits, I also hear used, when you're not bothered or you're, living life as if they don't exist or, still managing your affairs, they get really upset, really tight. And that's when you could really draw more overt actions out of them. And that's the phase that we're at here when we come into January 2022. It is around this time that I begin contacting law enforcement. Now, I hadn't done that before, after you know almost a decade at this point. They hadn't shown their hand uh, to a degree where, if this was a government operation, where I think it would have been able to move anywhere. There wasn't anything actually tangible on the ground that I could actually uh, present. So nothing was reported before then. But in January 2022, as I said, you know, they began to get very close. Okay, I said, all right, let's start filing some paperwork. And my first report actually was on January 11th, and it was to the FBI. I mean, local police didn't seem appropriate for the type of hacking and, basically interstate crimes that were going on, felonies that were going on. So the feds is the first report I sent. But I don't know if I mentioned this in the introduction, but you're not going to see all the details of all the reports, because I did have an idea that, I mean, I've said that before, that, this could be a government operation. So I didn't screenshot or copy or save the actual complaints that I sent to these agencies. Having done that, then they would have probably become wise to, oh, he's probably on to us, thinks it's us or whatever. And maybe they would have called back, you know, their flying monkeys, essentially. And I'm using the term flying monkeys. I've never seen Wizard of Oz, uh, but I think I've heard enough about Wizard of Oz, like I get the gist of it, you know. And I know that term is used in like the narcissistic abuse community. I don't venture there most ever, but what I'm understanding is that they're like the minions, right? So I hope I'm using that term right. They're flying monkeys, and in later, perhaps next season or 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 some episodes in the future, I'm gonna actually put faces and personalities to these flying monkeys. We're gonna be able to, examine what would bring someone to participate in this kind of we're going to look at their circumstances, look at how, how anyone could get caught up in this type of stuff. Like, I mean, I think these will be interesting. So that's coming up. Um, but they probably would have called their flying monkeys back if I had, you know, really shown that I was like on to the feds. So you won't see those types of records. I had to basically make it look like, okay, I'm just trying to get I mean, legitimately, in fact, I'm trying to get some help with an actual situation. All the reports that, anyone could see is truthful. I'm explaining, hey, there's hacking going on, there's harassment going on, there's people showing up at my at my place, like, and they're all weird. They never, I'll even confront. I even confronted a guy like straight up, like, hey, da 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 da. They'll lie. So you don't really know when to pop off. But I think, one day I might just say, I'm gonna trust my hunch on this one and pop off. Um, but we're in the running stage right now. They're running, so it's like, you know, uh, but who knows? Maybe they might get a little froggy. But continuing on, that's what's basically going on. So I start to get some paperwork filed with the feds, and the only thing that's important about this email that we're looking at is the date. That's really the only thing I want you to focus on. It's an actual police report. You can see the identification number for it. I'm pretty sure you can make a FOIA request to the Orange County Sheriff's Office to actually get the contents of that filing. So, but fast forward to April. April comes around, and I want to buy a firearm. I haven't owned a gun in about how many years? Like at that point, probably 14, 15 years. I've been cool, no problems, no need to have a firearm. But yeah, now with the events that are taking place, they're flying monkeys. I decide I'm gonna get a gun. Now I have a friend. He's really into guns, a lot of guns, serious enthusiast. I reach out to him, and see if he wants to help me find something, that I could conceal, carry, jog with, like that. Like I was really trying to get set up so that whatever I need to do, I'm gonna be right. He's a truck driver. He's never he's not in town, but he's like, okay, yeah, I got some time off. I'm be in town. We'll go to the gun store and pick one out. Now, I did try to tell this friend about this gang stalking business some months before that, like maybe, so this is around late March, early April. I think maybe around October. I did tell him exactly what was going on, but it just went over his head. That's how the stalking thing works. It's like, they want to really target the individual and make it so, but only with a pattern that they would understand is harassment, threats, and whatnot. But to the outside world, it everything could just seem, benign, not important. And, there's a lot of, victim resources that'll point out that this is like typical type of, I mean, it's something law enforcement should know, all the persons in the judiciary system should know. Like, this is the way stalking works. So I tried to explain it to him. You know, all my friends, all my family that I brought this up to, like, they all respect me. They don't say, I'm crazy or anything, but I could tell it just goes over their head. And I never push the issue. I'm just like, yo, I'm telling you this. And then, I just hope that if one day, you know, if, I got to drop them a hint, or, whoever I'm with, I got to drop them a hint, and then we might have to do something, that they remember I mentioned that and they move accordingly. But, I don't push the issue beyond that. So, you know, he just thinks, oh, I'm just trying to get a heater, need a toaster, and that's about it. But I have text messages. I did ultimately purchase my firearm on Wednesday, April 6th. Shooter's World in Orlando. You could see some text messages between my friend and myself, and basically I'm letting them know that I have like a 3-day review after I purchase my weapon. Now he's able to get his uh, same time he purchased a gun, it'll be transferred to him, and I believe it's because he has his concealed carry. I thought I had my concealed carry at the time, but I didn't. I think it was probably later on that month I actually got the physical card. But so I had to wait. And he contacts me that Thursday, to check up, just to see what's good. And I tell him, yeah, I'm still waiting to pick up my weapon, which would be on Saturday. And he offers to go pick it up for me. And I tell him, no, at this time, I figure, feds are on me hot anyway. So if that's, if there's anything that's gray about having somebody pick up a gun for you, I don't want those kind of issues. So I'm content with waiting. But the next morning, well, not even the next morning. For me, it was in the afternoon, like 2 in the afternoon. We just chatting it up, and he tells me overnight someone puts a bullet through his bedroom window, and it's not, and this isn't even his bedroom window. This is a guest room at his parents' place. Like I said, he's always on the road. Like, it's only if he's in town and he'll probably crash there, or he'll stay at his lady's crib, or you know other homie's crib or whatever. But they put a bullet through that bedroom, and he doesn't even tie it into the whole stalking thing now. Because, like I said, I tried to mention to it, went over his head. I didn't. I hadn't mentioned it again up until that time. But when that happened, I understood that this was related to that. That this was a threat. And when these things occur, like at first you're saying, okay, could this just be coincidence? Like that's your first thing. And then, you're like, well, you eventually get past the point where, yeah, it's probably not a coincidence. This is it would be, I mean, the neighborhood where uh this occurred, I mean, it's one of the top zone for one of the top schools. There's really not crime around there like that. So yeah, coincidence was not something I felt was what this was. Um, and then you're concerned, yo, should I tell people now that hey, I got people acting crazy. I'm not sure who they are, but it's probably related to that. Now you're worried that you know you can't even have relationships, you can't even have friends anymore. Because I wouldn't even blame my friend to say, hey, yeah, I'd like Sam to come through, but Sam got ops that's out here, firing shots, like, and I wouldn't even blame him for that. So that becomes a concern. It's a very alienating type of situation that, uh, these types of things create, and But I eventually did tell him that's what I believe it's about. For him, I mean, he's not sure. But he did get a police report filed. I have the police report. It took me a year to get it. I have the body worn camera from the single deputy who arrived on the scene. That's something that we're going to have to look at and dissect. It was like, it's just probably, I mean, I don't even know. It's not even like, you're watching TV and you see how investigations work. This was just terrible. I mean, there was enough information given at that first preliminary investigation where the deputy was on scene, like, to warrant a lot more action. And we're going to look at that, but that's not what happened. But this is in April. Understand, in January, I began telling law enforcement that I have, stalkers, people hacking, people showing up, people, sending threats. And now, as I'm trying to get a firearm for my personal protection, my friend gets a bullet through his bedroom. And it turns, yeah, so this is in the span of about 3 months. And during these 3 months, I'm, trying to get an investigation started. I'm appearing at the sheriff's office to try to get an investigation started. I mean, speaking to a deputy isn't going to help. Like, there's nothing a deputy can do. I mean, I did my best to explain to them what I could explain to them, but what I really needed was to have an actual case started and an actual investigator who understands how stalking activities work to address it. And the sheriff's office failed to provide that. And there's a reason why they failed to provide that. The bullet, the suspect, or at least who I believe is the suspect, is someone who's known by the sheriff's office and possibly working for the sheriff's office in an official capacity. Maybe a technician, maybe a CI, an informant of some sort. But they know this individual. And we're going to get into that as well. We're going to look at records to see what the detectives did when I provided them suspect information. And we're going to see if everything was on the up and up with that. But this is episode one. And we're already seeing that there is violence. There is a clear pattern of violence and intimidation, and efforts to report it to law enforcement have essentially been ignored. Now, and there are complaints filed with professional standards at the sheriff's office regarding this. Is it because I'm black? I mean, as racist as these cops are, like, yeah, like I could see, a brother, and I'm 6'4". They just not gonna take it seriously. They want me to crash out, and I'm pretty sure that's what they do as a practice. Like, I mean, sometimes I'm watching like these cop shows or clips or whatever, and they know how to bait a brother to crash out. Like, they know the right buttons to push and all that. Like, these cats been doing it for here, at least in America, for 400 years. Like, I mean, with African Americans, I can see that happens more. It doesn't happen much with others because we don't have that same history of trauma from slavery to Jim Crow as African Americans, but like they're able to push those buttons because of that generational oppression, and I can tell that's kind of their approach to when I come up to them and try to say, hey, this is what's going on. They're like, oh, but you're not gonna crash out and let us come catch you? I'm about to say some wild stuff. Let me chill. Either way, Saturday, um, I get my firearm. This is a release of liability form. I went into the shooting range to shoot. You can see one of my first targets that I shot up. I am very accurate. The 4 bullets to the chest, I mean, I think probably those were just me. I mean, any diverging bullets, it's just me trying to understand the drop from the weapon. But like, I think this wasn't that far. It was only, I think we were at 30. This was 30 yards. 30 yards. I mean, yeah, this was that 30 yards. Um, so yeah, that's episode 1 for you. I wanted you guys to see to get an idea of this particular event because it's going to become key going forward. The next episode, we're going to talk about how these activities led to the death of a woman. About a year after my first report in January of 2023, this gang stalking, the flying monkeys, the the sheriff's office, their activities led to the death of a woman who was a mother and wife. She had 3 daughters, and she wasn't even involved in the matter at all. That's what these people are responsible for, and we're going to get into that in the next episode. In subsequent episodes, we are going to look at how I came to find out that the shooter at my friend's parents' home is known to the sheriff's office and possibly working for them. We're going to definitely, like I said, look at what the detectives did with that information, how they sat on it, perhaps. Did they even pull? I mean, I'm pretty sure we could see records if they even pulled the body camera to get the full report, because there were some things said that would raise eyebrows, that should have prompted uh, more action unless the sheriff's office knew who shot it and decided not to care. So that's what we got coming up, and I believe that's it for this episode.